Welcome and happy Thursday. I am Mary from Mary's Heirloom Seeds, and this is our weekly live chat here on YouTube. So, for those of you who just joined me, I try to go live here every Thursday on our YouTube channel to share a little bit of information about growing an awesome garden. Now, behind me, we have a lot of different things going on. We're in a little bit of a different environment today. I am not out in the garden. I am in my kitchen, and we're going to talk about food preservation basics. Now that our gardens are in full swing, it's a great time to talk about how we preserve our harvest. But before we get started, I'll give you guys a couple seconds to come join me and say hi and let me know where you're at. Sometimes I can't see all of your comments all at once, but I do try to answer any questions that you might have during my live chat. If for some reason I missed your question during the video, not to worry, I will answer your question in the comments below, or you can send me an email to mary@marysheirloomseeds.com and I will try to answer your question. Now, before I get started on our topic for today, I want to share with you a couple of updates. I do this every time I go live, a couple of updates about what's going on here at Mary's Heirloom Seeds. It has been a doozy of a month, I swear. I don't know if it's the heat making everything go crazy or if it's just me, but this month of July has been absolutely crazy, but that's okay. So first things first, hey Jolene, thank you for joining me. First things first, we had a very exciting announcement on our social media. I only posted this, we got all kinds of people, Married with Chickens. Hey David, thanks for joining us. So I posted this on a couple of our social media pages, but this is not something that's available on our website yet. So the release date right now is August 2nd, and that will be when everything's available. I am super excited. I am working with a local business owner. She is awesome, and she's making me some towels. Now, my mom already has one, of course, and she says this is the softest towel she's ever had. She's biased because she's my mom, of course, but I will tell you that this is one of the softest towels I've ever had. They're super absorbent. They're perfect for washing off your produce. If you've got homegrown veggies that you've grown in your garden and you want to either wipe them off or you want to wash them and dry them, this towel is awesome. And one of our customers said, well, hey, Life After Stroke with Tom, welcome. Another one of our another homesteader friends. So the towels are super awesome. They're super absorbent, and I'm excited to offer that at Mary's Heirloom Seeds. Again, I'm working with a local small business owner who is absolutely fantastic. T-shirts. Not yet. We are dealing with a couple of supply chain issues, but I will hope to offer t-shirts very soon. Have you read my recent email? If you haven't, I recently dumped our entire customer list at Mary's Heirloom Seeds. This has nothing to do with our customer list. If you place an order, it's just a separate section for our just for our emails that I send once a week. That was stressful. It was crazy. I was just a click of a button, poof, everyone went gone. Fortunately, after 4 hours, the tech team was able to help get everything back and dodged a bullet on that one. So let's talk about food preservation. Enough with all the updates on our July. It's August next week. We've got a lot of things going on for August. I'll share that with you later. Tonight we're going to talk about food preservation. And I'm going to keep it very simple. I'm not going to actually preserve some of this food because some of it's already preserved, but I do want to share with you the basics of food preservation. How do you preserve your food? What methods do you use and which do you prefer? So I personally have a couple of preferences. I like water bath canning and I like freezing. Those are my two go-to methods. David says, I just canned some hot pepper sauce and pickles today. I saw that. Mary's Heirloom Seeds follows David on Facebook, and you have some awesome stuff. Every day it's like, what's going on in my garden and what's going on in my kitchen, which is pretty awesome. So let's go to the basics. Number one is canning. You have water bath canning and you have pressure canning. Those are two completely separate ways of preserving food. They're going to depend on what you are canning is going to determine what method you use. That back there is my water bath canner. Now, if you notice, I have a glass top stove. I have not yet braved pressure canning on this stove, and there's a couple reasons why. Not every pressure canner is rated for a glass top. Not every glass top is rated for a pressure canner. So I don't know if this one in particular does, so I haven't chanced it yet. Jolene says, my first year preserving, blanching, and freezing so far. Sister-in-law is going to teach you water bath canning. That is the easiest way. So sometimes what I do is I use a food, I forget what it's called. It takes your food and it sucks down. What's it called, Bobby?
Vacuum sealer.
Vacuum sealer. Thank you. So a vacuum sealer is just an extra step if you're freezing. You can put all your goodies into it and you can freeze it down. It sucks all the air out of it, so it's a lot thinner, and then you can put it in the freezer. You can do it with fresh or blanched veggies. You can do it with raw meats. It's very easy to do. And that is my easiest way of freezing. By using those bags, you can kind of save a little space in your freezer if that helps. So that's one thing the vacuum sealer is really helpful for. Canning, on the other hand, it gets kind of intimidating. Some people are a little nervous to try it, and it's really not as difficult as it seems. Once you get the hang of it, it is a lot easier. So you see behind me here, that is my water bath canner. It's really easy to use, and it's used for things with a higher acidity level. And those are things like pickles. Give me a second, I'm going to show you. I have pickled hot peppers. These are yellow Scotch bonnets and my homegrown garlic at the bottom that I pickled. That way I can use my water bath canner. And we also have some white cucumber. Now, everybody was asking me, can you can or can you pickle the miniature white cucumber? And I thought, well, I haven't really pickled it because we eat so much of it. Sometimes I eat it right out in the garden for a snack, so I hadn't actually pickled it. Well, I'll tell you this much. I have pickled the miniature white cucumber and they were delicious. Now, there's different sizes of canning jars, and the reason I use the smaller ones for this one in particular, that is a lot of hot peppers. For those of you who don't know, those hot peppers, you use them fairly sparingly in a recipe. So I didn't want to can a quart or a half a quart jar of a hot pepper because one, it takes up a lot of room in my refrigerator, and two, one little piece of this does a good job of making something really spicy. So just keep that in mind if you do decide to can things, whether you use a pressure canner or a water bath canner, that's going to be determined by what you are canning. So keep that in mind. There are safe methods to use. I'm a rebel gardener, but I'm not a rebel canner. I do tend to follow the rules as far as canning is concerned, where I mostly break the rules out in the garden. So I'll put these back. What else? Pickling, we already talked about that. Now, another thing you can do besides pickling, can you give me just a second here? I completely forgot one of my pieces. Claudine Jones says, hey, hello. I just learned how to pressure can a week ago. Awesome. Well, welcome to our food preservation. Now, pickling is a really easy way to preserve your harvest in a water bath canner. There are so many recipes out there, and Honestly, to keep you all safe, I'm going to say go with tested recipes from sources that are reliable instead of just regular blogs. Now, I have a blog at Mary's Heirloom Seeds, but I'm not a professional canner, and I try to give you the safest way for canning because you don't really want to make your family sick. You don't really want to make yourself sick. So that is one of those times that I definitely follow the rules. Drinking my coffee tonight. Now, if you are looking to do something similar to pickling, but you're not really ready to go for the canner, my camera is kind of bouncing around here. You can try fermentation. Now, my amazing husband, I refer to him as Doc. Claudine, yes, that is not a freeze dryer. That is a dehydrator, and I'll discuss that in just a second. My amazing husband one year decided to get me fermentation lids for my birthday. I am not the easiest person to shop for because I don't wear jewelry. I don't wear any makeup really or perfumes. So every year it's like, what do you want for your birthday? That is my birthday present this year. It isn't even my birthday yet, but you know, I need it for the garden. So the fermentation lids are one of my favorite things to use. You literally need a jar that has a lid big enough for, this one's actually for a wide mouth ball jar. Some jars that you recycle from store-bought foods are similar in size to these, and these fermentation lids are amazing. I think they came in a pack of 4, and if you check back on some of my YouTube videos, you will see a video for fermenting hot peppers. So I took yellow Scotch bonnets and I took Trinidad scorpion peppers, I think it was scorpion peppers, and I fermented them. And then I made a salsa out of them, and it was probably one of the most delicious salsas I've ever made. So when I showed you that little teeny jar, they are really, really spicy. And so when you do the fermentation of a really hot pepper, you don't really need a lot of hot peppers with your salsa. But I will say this as kind of a word of caution. When I ferment hot peppers, I only ferment the peppers. If you do, and hang on just a second, I'm missing your questions. You have a Excalibur dehydrator. Dehydrating is amazing. You dehydrated the skins of the tomatoes and made tomato powder. That is one of the things I really, really want to try. Life After Stroke says we used an old cook stove outdoors under a roof last time I helped can anything. 1978, so it's been a little while since you've canned anything. So yes, the drying I'm going to get to in just a second. So fermenting is another option. It doesn't necessarily require refrigeration while it is fermenting, but it should be refrigerated after fermentation. So something to consider if you decide to ferment. Obviously, refrigeration and freezing are some of the easiest ways to preserve your harvest, but we want to look for a longer term preservation method. It's no secret that things are not like they used to be. The food situation in this country is not like it used to be. People's grocery bills are going up. Sometimes you go to the grocery store and there isn't enough on the shelves, or maybe they're missing some things. One of my friends just shared that her local grocery store had 6 eggs for $3.99. That is insane. So food prices are definitely going up. So if you can preserve your harvest, make it last a little longer, you can hopefully cut your grocery bill in half, but also give yourself a little bit of food security, or a lot of food security, depending on what you're doing. I've got 3 types of hot peppers actually back here. I've got habaneros, I've got Scotch bonnets, and I've got jalapenos. All of those can be pickled in the water bath canner. They can be dried in the dehydrator. They can be fermented. So there's a lot of different ways you can do this. Now, freeze drying is next on my list to discuss. I don't own a freeze dryer. That is definitely something that is in the future, but not something that I wanted to tackle right now. With our brand new homestead, we've only been here 13 months. So we have accomplished a ton in just a short 13 months. On top of that, our well, it does not produce enough water fast enough for me to be able to use the irrigation system, the drip irrigation system that we want for the garden. So I did discuss that in a previous video. I was going to put this drip irrigation system for the different gardens that we have all over the property. Unfortunately, I can't do that because I don't have enough pressure. So one of the things that we are adding to the property is more water. Fingers crossed, that goes in next week, and they're giving me some extra pumps at the different gardens that we have. And I'm really excited about that. What was that?
Faucets.
So the new faucets will give me a water source at the garden. I did mention I put in this beautiful garden in a completely remote portion of the property. But there was only one problem. I don't have any water over there. So I literally have to haul buckets of water to that garden. So now that we will have water in different faucets in different areas on the property, I will be able to expand, and hopefully, fingers crossed, everything will be awesome. Hey, Linda, thanks for joining me. David said some of my peppers and cucumbers, I did a salt water and spice brine and let them sit a few days, added them as you pick vegetables. So yep, that's a way of fermentation. Marcel says, grow some big old eggplants. Absolutely. I've got eggplants in the refrigerator, and I will be using those in the dehydrator this week. Claudine says they're so expensive. Yes. So that is the number one reason why I have not purchased a freeze dryer. They are very expensive, and I want to tackle the dehydrator before I add anything to the garden. So I'm just checking everything out. That'll be such a game changer for you guys. I'm really excited. Water is life, and without water, my garden struggles. And I'm sure some of you might be experiencing some of the same issues that we have. We had a lot of water last year, and I was really excited. And I look out in the garden last year, and some of it was flooding. It was literally being washed away. So we built raised beds because the main garden, well, one of the larger gardens, was being washed away. So we put raised beds up, and now we haven't had a lot of rain. Sharon D says, where is your homestead? We are in East Texas. Specifically, we are in Ben Wheeler, Texas. It is a small town of about 440 people. We're about an hour and a half, an hour and 20 minutes outside of Dallas on the east side. So it's really hot. It's 110 degrees outside. So I'm excited about being indoors today to talk to you guys about food preservation. All right, so we talked about canning, the different types of canning. We had water bath canning and pressure canning. We talked about pickling. We talked about freeze drying, which I don't have a freeze dryer. We talked about fermentation. These lids are very easy. There's so many ways you could do it. You don't need these fancy lids, but that's one of many ways to do it. Curing is another one. Now, I don't cure anything. From what I understand, curing is more of a meat thing, and I don't cure meat. So that is one way to preserve your food. Again, I'm not going to go into specifics about that one. We're talking mainly about our produce. We already talked about freezing. Some things need to be blanched before you freeze them. They do a little better, and some do not. So beans, for example, snap beans, like a green bean. Oftentimes, we blanch our green beans before we freeze them. It just keeps them a little fresher. Whereas something like basil or cilantro, you can actually use those vacuum seal bags and freeze them without having to blanch them. Now, another way you can do things with herbs is you can freeze them in oil. So I have done ice cube trays, and you chop your basil or your, I don't know, any kind of herb that you really want, oregano, parsley, and you can chop them really well. You can put them in the cube of what you would put ice, and you can drop some oil in there and freeze it that way. Then what you do is you take that ice cube tray and you pop those out and you put it in a bag or a container and you put it back in the freezer. Make sure you label it because you don't want to go back and find a bag of ice cubes and you don't know what they are. It's just a green square and you're thinking, well, just chuck one in the recipe and hope it's whatever herb that you're looking for. So that's something to consider. That will save you a little bit of space if you freeze them in a cube. That will obviously take up a little more space than if you froze them in a flat tray, but it's just one of many things you can do. And last but not least is dehydrating. So you see I've got some veggies back here. This one is Mondo, but this is a zucchini, and this is definitely something that is going to go in my dehydrator. You want to slice these really thin. You can use manually chop them with a knife. You can use a mandolin, a slicer. I don't do well with super sharp objects like that because I like all of my digits, all of my fingers, so I tend to use a knife. So that is one thing you can do with your zucchini if you get too much of it. Now, I don't know about you, but oftentimes we end up with so much zucchini we don't know what to do with. So freezing it is one of many things you can do. Now, I have a friend here locally. What she does is she shreds it with a cheese grater, and then she freezes it into small containers. She's got kids, and they don't always like vegetables. But what she does is by shredding it with a cheese shredder, and then she can put it in a recipe. So maybe you give your kids spaghetti, or maybe you make a recipe of chili or something, and you can throw those vegetables in there, and they don't necessarily know that they're getting something healthy with their awesome spaghetti. So that's something you can consider doing if you are freezing, is shredding them and then freezing them in small containers. Now you can also do that. Married with Chicken says we're all about the shred and freeze. Me too, it's really easy. How about preservation of root veggies like carrots and potatoes? I learned to put them in a box with sand or soil. Yes, I have heard that as well. I haven't really done it myself, usually because a lot of times either we're growing for seed or we're eating it, maybe not the root crops, because there's a lot of dirt on the root crops that I usually bring in and scrub off a little better. But you can definitely store carrots in particular in sand. You can do similar to a root cellar. Before we had mass refrigeration, we had root cellars. And so that was a cold storage. So that is, David already jumped the gun on me, that is the last on my food preservation. Now I have a pumpkin. I have several pumpkins, and they store in a cool, dry place, and you can store them for 6 months or more. It just depends on, one, where you're storing it, and two, how you're storing it. So you don't want to store your pumpkins or your winter squash in an area that gets a lot of moisture. You don't want to store it in a place that gets too cold or too hot. So you don't want it to freeze, because once it thaws out, it becomes a rotted mess. But you don't want it to get too hot, because then it rots again. And you don't want it to get wet, because again, it becomes a rotten mess. So your best bet is, if you have not an attic, but if you have a basement, you don't want to store it directly on the concrete. You want to put it up on something. You can put it on a crate, in cardboard above the cement, so you don't have it right there. Give me a second. This is a Seminole pumpkin. This has 0 rotting, and I harvested this November of last year. This is the last of my Seminole pumpkins from last year. And I will probably eat this weekend. So I will have no more Seminole pumpkins until I start harvesting outside. So this is my cold storage. This is in a cabinet in the kitchen where it stays cool, it stays dry, and there's no moisture in that cabinet anyway. So there's no leaking water, it's not freezing, it's not getting too hot. So that is one of my cold storages. I have not tried the sand in the box method, but I will probably try that this winter time. We have expanded the gardens. I mentioned that in a previous video about, I don't know, 2 months ago, that we've expanded our gardens. This one over here is expanded even more since then. And it will be even more, even bigger once we get water put to the backside of that part of the garden. So anyway, that is my video on food preservation. If you have any more questions, please feel free to ask. I do try to answer your questions while I'm live here, but you can always send an email to mary@marysheirloomseeds.com, and I do try to answer your questions as quickly as possible. In the description section of this video, you will find several awesome links. A couple are to videos we already have and to our social media. Some of them, one in particular I mention every time, is my comprehensive planting guide. That will give you a chance to see some of the articles that I've written in the past and also give you an idea about what to plant and when to plant. Also, there is a link to our e-newsletter sign up. Now, that is the list that I accidentally dumped, but we retrieved it and fixed it, and thank goodness they were able to get me back up and running. And if you want to add yourself to that list, go ahead and use that link. When these awesome towels are ready to go, we will put them on our website, and then I will send an email to all of our customers. The first batch will be very limited, and then the second batch should be even more. I want to make sure that we get enough for everybody. So thank you very much. I do appreciate it. I've got Mary Hepburn says thank you, Jolene says thank you, and Shannon D says love the video. We appreciate you, and I do appreciate you watching the video. Please, if you get a chance, hit the thumbs up for our video, subscribe to our channel, share the video with your friends. My goal at Mary's Heirloom Seeds has always been to help you grow an amazing garden. Today is an extension of that garden, and we're trying to help you preserve your garden so you have a little more food security. That is the goal, is to grow an awesome garden and then save everything that you've grown that you don't eat right away. Alrighty, everybody, I'm gonna go hopefully have some homegrown chow for dinner. Thank you again for joining me, and you have an amazing week, and happy planting.